Also important to say, first of all, I'm glad that we're all here today and having the, you have a card too, sir? Did you want to speak?
I don't have a card, no, but I'd like to speak.
Okay. You just need to fill out a card with just your name on it.
A yellow piece of paper.
Yellow piece of paper, whatever you need. The
Whatever
city,
you
that's a city policy, sorry.
That's Joey. That's right.
Come on over, Joe. Commissioner, I should say. I didn't recognize you with that hat on.
Man, this is deja vu all over again.
Could
For
you please
those,
state your name for the record, please?
my name is Joe Egley. Yeah, 20 pounds heavier and a lot more gray hair. Hey. Excuse me? My nemesis never fails. Yeah, I've sat in the back and listened, and I'm one of those things now that you hear is a slumlord and all that stuff. But my apartment is at 202 South Federal Highway, and because of the market back then, I was unable to sell it. I kept it vacant for 3 years, and I finally had to rent it because I no longer had a homestead exemption on it that was less than $200 a year. And when it went to a little over $700 a year, it kind of hurt a little. But looking at some of the good ideas that have come up with, and thanks to Andy, I was going to bring that up about the golf course. But assessments, let me say this first before I get into that. When I was commissioner 2000 to 2006, I was quite attuned to public works and the water and treatment plant, the power plant. That was my forte, if you will. And I've seen what your infrastructure looks like. I mean, when your crew goes out and digs a 6-foot hole to patch a leak in a sewer line or a water line, and they splice it, and they put clamps on either end and throw a couple bags of Quikrete on it to stop the leak, that's not what you want. And the situation is, I don't know how many of those. I can tell you, you've got 129 miles of roads in the city of Lake Worth and 38 miles of alleyways. It's amazing I can remember that. That's got, but, you've got thousands upon thousands of patches in your infrastructure. And if you don't do it now, it's, well, they can tell you over there, this is the best time so far as interest rates are concerned. And, Mr. Perillo, you hit right on the head. It's going to go up and it's going to be ugly. You think you're catatonic now, you ain't seen nothing yet. But getting back to gas tax, you get that in lane miles from the county. Okay, however many lane miles you have in the city, within the 5.5 square miles, that's what your tax comes from, or your income from that. And the bond, you can do that. Golf course, we've talked about grants. Do you have any grant writers now that are capable of doing this? Okay, well, good. That's one source. CRA. I was never very fond of the CRA to start with, but money in the current budget capacity. I smile about this because you got to remember, your income comes in and then it goes out, and it goes out mostly in human resources. It's not, you don't have a pile of money in the basement of City Hall. Okay, you relieve yourself of the police department, I guess, sort of. but you still have what, fire rescue, you have your power plant, which we can't afford to sell. You've got a water plant. I tried to get reverse osmosis in there, but once I left, you guys killed it. So you're looking at grants, non-ad valorem assessments, Peter, and your assessments. Well, you don't have to put a time limit on your assessments, do you? I don't believe you do. Gentlemen over there, do you have to put a time limit on your assessments?
We'll get to that.
It's okay, I'll
They're
get
going to
my
talk about
best.
assessments anyway.
But you can do it that way to keep the cost down. I mean, you know, somebody like me, it's not gonna matter. You get to be 70 years old. But that's one way to do it, is adjust the assessment time period. So, I guess that's about all of it, except Mr. Sable Pond. Back then, back there, money wasn't coming in that fast to City Hall, even though the values were going up. Now, majority of your incomes does come from these slum landlords, believe it or not. And code compliance, back then, I'm sure they probably do it the same now. They're out every day. I mean, you ask some of these people that are your slum landlords, and they can tell you their first, middle, and last name. Okay, so these people are working hard. And so it's hard to keep up with what you have so far as slum landlords, but it still continues. I don't know. I guess that's about all I have to say right now. I appreciate your time, Commissioners, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Loretta.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Tammy Panza?
Hi there, Tammy Panza, 116 North L. Wasn't going to come up and speak, but I've been inspired a little bit by everything else everyone else has said. And I think we're all in agreement we need new roads. But one of the things, as a person who was, again, against it first, really on the fence for a long time, and then just said, hey, we really need to do this. When are we ever going to get this done unless we start now? I talk to a lot of people, and you're trying to say, hey, we really need this, really, I trust this commission. Well, show me the backup. Show me what made you come up with the $64 million. Get the complete backup that they gave you, who made all of the people that drove around on the roads and estimated how much we need to make, how much we need to get to fix this road. Give us the backup, give us the money, don't just kind of give us the canned 5-page PDF that we can't read. Have it available online. We used to have it available online where we could look it up. People would go through it. I mean, we're really interested here. And I would like to share that backup, be able to find that backup and talk about it and break it down and say, hey, $800,000 here, fine. $500,000 here, you know, the different estimates will, of course, go out to bid if a bond ever passes. But we really need to know what amounts made that total, or all the different pieces, so to speak. And I wasn't able to find that online, even though I looked, and I thought I was pretty good about finding stuff out. And I had a hard time with finding out the detail, the backup, all the people that said, you need $64 million to do this setup. I want to see the 1,000 pages that they went through to actually make up that amount, and I'd like to see it online. About the keeping your house clean, I know the commission here, I love them, adore them, I think they're doing a great job. I know the code is working to improve the blight. I know that there are many more licenses going out, the rental licenses are improving, but I don't have a way to see that unless I write in and ask. So I'd like to see an online database where you could actually look up an address and say, are you licensed? Do you have a rental license? And I think it should be more easily available than it is. And I talked to a friend who has a rental and his floor is falling out, and he's got obvious issues with code where if his house was actually a licensed rental, it would be inspected and it would be known and it wouldn't pass inspection and the landlord would have to fix it. And it's not going there because they're afraid that they're gonna raise the rent. So all of these things are happening underneath the radar, the Airbnb comment. You can look it up and see it. I know we have an issue with the short-term rentals, and I'm not sure that that's a really great subject to even, that's a whole nother meeting as far as I'm concerned. But there's ways that we can improve it and show that we're doing good business practices. And then I would also like to see more advertisement, road signage, get an ad on the highway, use our billboard, get people into Lake Worth from Route 95 from our 2 exits. And I know all the reason why they won't put one there for free, because we don't have a direct access to the beach. But there's gotta be some way that we can get something up there that says, hey, come to Lake Worth, this is historic. And I really think we should work on that a little bit more, get people in from 95. Thank you.
Thank you. It's so interesting when we talk about all these things. First of all, good job. Thank you everyone who got up and spoke. And Ms. McGivern, you're right, this is a conversation that we really need to be having. And I'm very, very grateful to everyone who came here and to those who sent messages through other people. First of all, it's funny, these guys live in my neighborhood here. And you're in Dartmouth, right? I'm right up by Columbia. And anyone who knows, we started having conversations about this before, what they called it. They called it the rump first. It was the road, what was it? The roadway utility master plan. It started as rump, right? And then it went to Lake Worth 2020, and we basically had staff, and talk about an exercise in bringing staff together too, involved in this. One of the biggest problems that we've had, and Ms. Powell too, if this is going to address what you said, one of the biggest problems we had here in the city, really until just recently, is that we didn't have all the homework done to apply for grants. All the shovel ready, ready to go, all the research and R&D, all of the stuff that needed to happen. You can't just apply to something and say, and we did. We actually in the past applied for these grants without having any of that work done, and of course got turned down for it, because you have to do a lot of homework to do that. And a lot of communities in Palm Beach County did a lot of that work 15 years ago, 20 years ago. They brought in GIS, we didn't even have GIS systems in place 3 years ago. We didn't have, think about mapping the whole roadway out. This work was done. All of this work and all of this, and actually going in and getting empirical data on the roadways and the conditions, and going in and having a company go in all through, underneath the ground, inside the pipes. None of that work was ever done. Just like someone said before, when something was done, they went in, fixed it, put a clamp on it, threw some concrete on it, and it was done. All of that has happened through the course of this, and this infrastructure has been neglected. It's basically been neglected. And what we're seeing is the result of patch fixes over the course of 10 to 20 years. So we didn't take care of that as a city, you know what I mean? And it wasn't important. There were probably other really pressing issues at the time, whatever. I'm not passing judgment on past whatevers, but infrastructure is important. When you don't take care of it, just like your house and your roof, it falls apart. And that's where we're at. We all agree, I think, on that matter. I didn't, first of all, especially since becoming mayor, I can't take a financial hit. I'm in your neighborhood too. I spent every penny I have. That's how I actually ended up getting involved in this and running for this. I did a build out on a building that was supposed to be in October and got in February. I paid a lease on 2 buildings because I was held up at the city on it. Was trying to pay. So many of the things that everybody complains about are the things that I've been through. And unfortunately, what I was proposing, what we were all proposing, what the city was proposing, is something that I didn't feel comfortable paying when I've invested everything I have in the city. But when you look at it, when you say, okay, well, let's start, Mr. Rinaldi, with doing the worst. What do you classify as the worst? Would the worst be the streets that never got infrastructure at all? If you say, okay, let's fix the worst, would that be, no, I'm saying, is the worst, I want you all to think about this, it's a rhetorical question. What is the worst the things, the streets that have never been touched, paved, sidewalk, traffic calmed, or anything. Is that the worst? Because the city never cared enough to put the infrastructure in there. That's number one. Or is the worst where there's a problem with infrastructure that already existed and is now being torn up, or now potholes are coming? Is that the worst? Is the worst what affects you only? Or affects the whole community only? I tell you, this conversation has brought up so many things in my mind and in my heart. It tears at me because it's so horrible to think that we have this enormous debt. And let me tell you, city staff came to us, and every one of these commissioners could tell you, this conversation started two and a half years ago, and they came to us with a wish list of over $200 million worth of stuff, from city land acquisitions and purchases and this and that. And we said, enough.
That was the Moab.
That was the Moab? The mother of all road improvement projects. And they came to us with all, and we said, no. Pull that out, 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 pull that out. We got down to the $63 million. And that was with roadway. And then it was, okay, the monies that people say, well, what are you putting in? We've seen that trick before, the $800,000 per district. That's a trick and whatever. That was because everyone said, hey, my neighborhood needs sidewalks. Hey, my neighborhood needs traffic calm. Hey, my neighborhood needs this, needs lighting, street lighting desperately. My neighborhood needs, and these are the things we heard, fire hydrants. So those communities, that money was supposed to be for the communities to decide what they needed most in their communities. Boy, was that naive of me to think that that wasn't good. I mean, I understand your concerns with government. I can understand the trust factors and all that kind of stuff. But I think that what we were trying to do is come up with a plan to try to get what needed to be done, pull up the roads at the same time. If we're going to have to fix the pipes underneath, fix the roads on top, make it better and do what we need to do. And then here, we know you were promised 20 years ago that you were going to get traffic calming, down your street or whatever. This will take care of that. You needed lighting forever and have a serious issue with that. You guys can deal with that there. It was perhaps ambitious, perhaps naive. Whatever it is, we're all coming together now. Okay, we have to figure out a way to do this. And I love a lot of the suggestions here. One of the golf course was one that you already mentioned. The bond covenants was the one thing too that was supposed to be written in there. And I'd like you to address that, city manager, too, in reference to why couldn't they do the bond covenants, why we couldn't have that verbiage beforehand. Because remember too, we're in the trenches, we're asking experts, and they're giving us their opinions, and we're trying to make these decisions for everyone, the best decisions, based on the opinions that the expert give us. So they give us empirical data, but we send money, we send trucks out, we send this out to give us data to help us make a decision for the best of everybody. Impact on the frontage, the one thing somebody mentioned about the assessment on fire rescue. One of the reasons most people know why I was against it, and that was when I sort of got involved in this, is that we have the MSTU that pays for fire services. The additional monies that would be assessed, and the reason I was against it, was to cover pensions. And you can't assess for pensions. That was the reason that you can't, we were already paying for it through the MSTU, but now we're paying for pensions of our former department. So that was where there was an issue. If you guys would just, talk about that as well. But we tried to look at everything, and then the big conversation was the lawyers came to us, and Christy will touch on that, and said, why can't you assess it based on your property? Well, because who's going to pay for the intersection of X and Y? Who's going to pay for this street? We don't use that street. I never travel on that end of town. Why should I pay for this on this? And that's where the conversation kind of went. So lawyers said to us, you can't. We've looked all over the country, and we found that you can't legally do this because you can't. It's not like a county road where everybody owns a plot of land on that one road, and they all are assessed the same amount of money based on their acreage on that one county road. These roads all intersect in alleyways and backways and byways, and they said that you can't do that. So again, we call on the expert to do this. Lord knows we're not all experts in every facet of everything that we do here in government. We rely on those experts to do it, and then make the decisions based on that, most importantly, from your input. And we've been talking about this for several years. 2020, like I said, we had probably 30 meetings. I don't know, Pam had the list of exactly how many meetings we had discussing this. And it usually comes down to when the time is to vote that everybody starts to get up to date on it. But we had a lot of conversations that whittled this down from one. Ms. Powell, I wanted to touch on, you mentioned about the MPO. Myself, Jamie Brown, and Felipe Lafazo are on the MPO. We were involved in it, we have grant writers, and we've taken advantage of every opportunity that we've had in regards to applying for grants. Like I said, before him, 3 years ago, we didn't have shovel-ready plans, we didn't have any research, we didn't have anything in place. This exercise in doing this has given us so much of the research that we've needed and the backup information that we've needed to apply for these. The first which of being, and one thing I said along the trail of when we were talking about 2020, is that I had always, again, probably naively said, well, we might not have to borrow that much money because I've been to Washington 2 times, I've been talking with Tallahassee, had the governor in here 3 times, lieutenant governor in here, Congresswoman Frankel in here, toured her on the property, showed us her needs, showed us the pipes, opened up the ground. I mean, I did everything but plead for these people to show them what we were going through and let them see firsthand that we're in trouble and we need help. And everybody has rallied. And I know, you know, first of all, we've got the Boutwell Road project that was a part of 2020 included on that. That's already in the long-range transportation plan of the MPO for funding. Now, the first question when you go to Tallahassee and you ask them for grant monies towards projects, they're going to say, is that part of the long-range transportation plan of the Metropolitan Planning Organization? And now we say yes. So we've got the work ready, we've got the paperwork in, we're on the long-range plan, and guess what? We go up to Tallahassee now and we say, we have that, we're going to get some money. And darn it, we're going to get some money this year out of Tallahassee. I feel it in my bones. And everybody's been in town to see it. So let's take that out of the mix. Like you said, you don't like the 800,000, take that out of the mix. You know, let's start to whittle down these numbers and see where they are, where we are, and let's talk with the experts about coming up with a plan to get these things fixed. Okay, also, Commissioner Amoroso just asked me to mention about the lobbyists that we have in Washington, D.C. 2 of the things that we did this year is one in Washington, D.C., called Dean Fay, and then also now this year in Tallahassee, Richard Pinsky. So we're getting their assistance. We have professionals in place, we have systems in place, we have all the things that we need, all the tools. And like I said, other cities did it 15 to 20 years ago, we just did it in the last 3 years. They're all in place now. And Ms. Latour, too, in reference to everything you said, a lot of those systems have been foundations. You know, Patricia doesn't stick at me hearing those are foundations on houses, but code enforcement, all the stuff. The ordinances that we just approved last year in January, how many houses have come down since it used to be if there was somebody sitting and squatting in a house and a prostitute going in and a drug addict next door and there's next to residential people, you couldn't even step foot on the property. Police couldn't go in there. City couldn't go in there. We couldn't cut the grass. We couldn't open the door. We couldn't do anything. The banks owned it, turned it over to somebody else. Somebody else had it. Nobody knew where it was. We have assessed, William Waters and his department assessed every single property. We've gone through all the abandoned foreclosed homes. We now have them. We have 13 homes scheduled for demolition that were not able to be saved or that were completely run down. You're going to see all that work that was just finally put into laws in January start, all the stuff, that the foundational kind of work we've been doing, you're going to start to see that happening. All the good stuff as a result of that. But we didn't do the homework before. Now the homework is done. Now we're going to start to see the fruits of the labor. But it can't happen fast enough for us because we've been through so much garbage for so long that I understand that. But y'all had amazing solutions. I'm going to turn it over to Mike and let him talk with direct staff or ask the right questions from staff.
Well, I think it would be good having the expertise here to talk a little bit about assessments and the non-MPOR assessments from the perspectives. And again, we're talking at a 20,000-foot level at this point about what's possible based on some of the comments and what you know about our situation. And maybe give us a little more input and data about how those kinds of things would work. Would you come up? Would you stand up? Would you stand up front? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Thank you. We heard a lot of good ideas tonight about different ways to fund your infrastructure. from a legal perspective, I can tell you, there's very few questions that are pure questions of law. Most of them are questions of facts, and facts are much more important. So, sitting here tonight, I can tell you, obviously, you can impose special assessments to fund road improvement projects. Those types of special assessments have been around since the early 1900s. That does not, however, mean that every single property in your city, if you did that, would pay the exact same amount. It doesn't mean that, sitting here today, that I can even tell you that every property would pay something, because looking at your map, there are some that there are no roads. And it also does not mean that every road would be eligible for that, because really special assessments for roads are uniquely suited to local neighborhood roads. They aren't so much suited to roads that are collectors or arterials and things like that, where there's a lot of passerby traffic. And the reason for that is that special assessments, in order to be legally defensible, have to pass a two-part court-imposed test. First, they have to provide a special benefit to the property. Courts have said yes, in theory, road improvements do. And the second is that they have to be fairly and reasonably apportioned among all the properties that are receiving that benefit, so that that property is not paying more than the benefit they're receiving. So that's really where a lot of the rub comes in, and a lot of the facts become very important about how this program would roll out. A non-ad valorem assessment is the same thing as a special assessment. It just happens to be collected pursuant to the uniform method on the tax bill. That's why you see the box on your tax bill for non-ad valorem assessments. Those are special assessments where the local government, either the county or a city or a special district that has special assessment power, has gone through the procedural steps outlined in Chapter 197 in order to put them on the tax bill and have them collected by the tax collector. So those are really the same funding mechanism, just expressed in a couple different ways. I heard some ideas about assessments for fire and for police and for fire hydrants. Assessments for fire. Assessments for fire protection services are all over the state. However, you all are already funding your fire protection services through an MSTU, which is a municipal service taxing unit that you've consented to, and the service is provided by the county, and the money goes to the county. So assessing for just your pension obligation, from my standpoint, would be an issue that would be sort of pushing that boundary, because the money has to be used to provide a special benefit to property. And whether you could make a convincing argument that funding a pension obligation would meet that essential nexus, I think would be difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, I just think that it would be a little bit difficult from a legal perspective. Special assessments for police services. Special assessments for police services are probably not going to be legally defensible. The Florida Supreme Court has not yet taken up a case that specifically addresses that issue. However, in dicta, with other